All right. And we are live. I'll be having to make sure. Season 5. We still going strong. I can't remember what episode. Where we at? Episode 1. Is this episode 1 of the Hood Needs? Oh wow. Episode 1 of the Hood Needs. I know, like, yeah, I can't keep up. Because we bringing y'all show after show after show. And we still got a lot to go. But shout out to everybody that's already tapping in. Thursday night, we live. We got a great conversation. We talking all about the Black church and its role in the fight for equity. As we know, the Black church is a special thing in the Black community. So it might be a little sensitive topic for some folks, but I think we need to have it. It's a great topic to touch on. So I'm excited. I got some great guests here with me tonight. And we're gonna get into it, but I gotta do what I do every time, and that's definitely kick this show off. Hey,
it's
a bop. It's a bop. Shout out to Alan. It's a bop. It's definitely a bop. Okay, y'all. Whew. I'm so excited. I have been wanting to have this conversation for a long, long time, and I feel like how it aligned perfectly to have you all here with me and for this great conversation. So I'm so excited to have this with you all. I want you, Miss Deidre, to please start us off by telling the folks who you are.
What's up, y'all? It's Reverend Dr. Deidre Wise Baker. I'm the assistant professor for community leadership at Eden Theological Seminary here in St. Louis. I'm also the director for the Walker Leadership Institute at Eden and the faculty director for the Center for Lived Faith and Organizing. Hat number 1. Hat number 2. I'm the project organizer for When Black Women Lead. And When Black Women Lead is a project of Heartland Action, which is the state organization for the Gamel Network, which combines Metropolitan Congregations United, St. Louis, and Moore Square in Kansas City. And we come together in the state of Missouri, we're Heartland Action. And When Black Women Lead is our first project out of Heartland Action.
Many hats, like a lot of us Black women, but shout out to you, Black Women Lead. I love that. Mr. DeMarco, yes. Legend in the Lou.
People tell me. It's an honor to be here. And my name is DeMarco Davidson. I'm the executive director of Metropolitan Congregations United. I've been the executive director since October 2023. But I've done a plethora of different things throughout the greater St. Louis area. So I'm excited to be here. And giving a shout out to, of course, Reverend Dr. Deidre Wise Baker, who's literally a superhero in my eyes. And shouts out to my pastor and congregation, Reverend Michelle Higgins with St. John's United Church of Christ. And shouts out to Gamelio as well, our national affiliate. And I serve as the treasurer for Missouri Organizing and Voter Engagement Collaborative, better known as MOVE. So we work on statewide issues, ballot initiatives, things of that nature.
Okay, y'all out here doing some things, a lot of things. That's what's up. But I can't wait to get into this conversation. As y'all can see, I'm very excited because I think when we look at the history of not just the church, but the civil rights movement, and again, Black community, the church is something important in that space and has been, it feels like, for a long time. And I don't know if that still somewhat stands, but that's what we're here to talk about. And so I would love you all to give us a glimpse into the history of the Black church and how it started. Please educate us.
I mean, I think, DeMarco can add on too, but I think there's some basic pieces that people should know. The Black church was formed in protest in the late 1700s. The AME denomination is sort of the mother of the Black church. And it was formed because white folks didn't want Black folks to worship the same way that they was worshiping. Wanted Black folks to be in the balconies and not take communion and a whole bunch of other stuff. And in protest, folks that were in that original church, that church that was a white church, went out in protest and ended up forming the first African-American church. And then the other denominations and pieces grew after that. But that was sort of how the Black church formed. So out of racism, a history of racism, a history of protest, is how, in part, the Black church formed.
Yep. And I always like to add on the caveat that of course, when we talk about Black, even as a social construct, first off, the church is older than that social construct. And if we're talking about church, I think it is important that we are mindful. Are we talking about like just Big C church? Or are we talking about Christian church? Or what church are we talking about? Because whenever we read anything from the Bible, that's Africa. All of it is Black. And most likely we talking about Christianity. Most likely that dude we call Jesus, most likely was a melanated Jew in the Palestinian, that would be area considered Palestine at the moment, or Palestinian area. So it's amazing. I always encourage people, especially if people talk about, Christianity, the white man's religion. How that happened? That's something that happened. So it didn't just happen that way. But more importantly, we're talking about, I think for tonight's conversation, we can specifically talk about the Black church, like Reverend Dietra shared as well. And just letting people know, I always give all the credentials, because far too often Black women don't get enough of their credentials mentioned or shared. So I always say Reverend Dr. Dietra Wise Baker, like a Tribe Called Quest, say the whole thing. So she like, bruh, don't say that. Like, I can't help it. So out of respect, I'm gonna say it. So making sure that we talk about, the Black church, and more importantly, the Black church in America, and what we need to, and how's it been, and where we're going as well.
You guys hit on several things that like had my brain like, whew. You said non-denomination was the mother of the beginning of the church, right? So to me, that means the Baptist and Christianity thing kind of, because non-denomination means there's like no part of like what do you call it? It's kind of like the separation of like religion in a sense, like Baptist, Pentecostal, and all these different.
Yeah, the Black church has in America, I think that's the way to say it, as DeMarco has, kind of shrunk the pot. I think there's ways to think about the Black church that is not just here, right? That's in the diaspora. But if we are kind of limiting the conversation to the Black church here in the United States, the AME church is the mother denomination. That is the establishment of the first Black church. And then there are other churches that formed in other denominations, but the mother of the Black church is the AME church. And of course, today that's still a denomination that has leaders and is alive.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did not know that. You just see.
And one thing most people don't know is that many of our denominations that even started here in America actually do have global reach as well. So that's why that's one reason why I shared how it's important to understand that we're talking about the Black church. It can be global, national, local, regional, personal as well.
It's levels to this, clearly. Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. And you said something too about erasing of the history when you talk about the Bible, and in the sense now we're talking about when we think about Christianity, it's conformed to be, like you said, That's the Jesus who we see in the most pictures with the long hair and the white skin and the nice robe, but that's not truly the original history of the church, the Bible. That's not who the story is all about, right? I'm
Yeah,
paraphrasing.
correct. Yeah, correct. Like, so not only so without going into too much, because so also, I forgot to mention that yes, the little letters behind my name, Master Divinity, MDiv, that just means I can talk about these things in a multiple layers. That's all, right? And I encourage people to we're talking about the Bible as well. Talking about, again, I'm just making sure I provide parameters because I can go all type of different directions. But when I think about the Bible, we're even reading, especially if we're reading New Testament, we're reading about this brown-skinned Palestinian Jew named Jesus when the letter J didn't exist. So his name might have been Yahshua or Yeshua. But then also he was speaking, he definitely, according to scripture, he spoke Aramaic. And that means, and then sometimes some of the elements of the New Testament were Greek. So, and our Hebrew. And like, so all these different things, actually, they matter because the different translations over the centuries, at one point in time, spoken word or a spoken tradition becomes written and then translated over time is almost like a 1,000-year game of telephone in some instances. The reason why some texts are considered sacred is because they actually can be validated or at least lined up with certain things going on in history to actually say, no, this is actually, that goes together. So that's why it's sacred text is not just like, oh, just make believe, right? No, some things can be proven and shown to have being valid. And that's one thing that, again, I think is important when we talk about all these translations. Somebody intentionally attempted to translate certain things to whereas, and depending on who was translating it, will depend on who also what audience they were translating it for or to. So there was many things that were translated and push and change to lift up things that were more European or even German. But then there also were people who came around and defeminized the Bible, defeminized the elements of God as well to make it more masculine. Because we're talking to more men who, for training for purposes or whatever. So it might not even been malicious, but to defeminize the Bible, that happened. That's a thing. So I'm also mindful of those type of situations that over the years, over the centuries of this verbal spoken tradition that's been translated when it came written down.
Makes sense. So getting back to the church here and the time frame of here where we really hear more talk about, especially around the Black church and its fights for equity and justice and the civil rights movement, and how that is kind of like the staple of what we see as Black church in today's time frame, right? When we think about the history of Black church, that's kind of where folks go to. It's nothing necessarily always beyond that. It's literally, oh yeah, Dr. Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement, and yeah, that's the Black church. That's what we know, and that's it. That's all. Can you all speak to some of that context and that time frame of what is that to the Black church? Like, is that what we are as the Black church? Are we more than that? Is there some missing pieces that people do not know or understand that we should be aware of and educated on? Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about the context of the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, and the other leaders themselves. One of the biggest ones is that the majority of the Black church was even involved. That's a huge one. So when people kind of try to point back to that as sort of a Black church moment, that's not entirely accurate, right? This was a minority church participation. These were sort of the prophetic or the progressive edge of many pieces of the church that were coming together to form the civil rights movement. This was not, everybody in every region, participating, and opening their doors to this. And so Martin Luther King is very palatable now. And most of the time, because we take away his less palatable parts, speeches, history, we kind of erase that, and we've kind of canonized him in a way that is safe and accessible for a lot of people. But in his historical moment, and the leaders that rode with him, they were much more risky, much more edgy, as you know, because people were getting killed. People were dying for what for what they were doing, for what they were asking for what they were fighting for. And so people have to always wonder, if the Black church comes from a prophetic tradition, which we do, where is the danger? If you're in the prophetic voice and you're in the prophetic movement, then there is inherent danger in that movement when you're close to the pulse of what you're supposed to be talking about and what you're supposed to be about. And a lot of what we call church, Black church included, is a lot of safe stuff. Ain't nothing prophetic about it. So we got some reckoning to do, because I think we're in a similar moment in our country where we have to decide who it is that we're going to be. And there's always been a prophetic voice in the church, in the Black church, and that prophetic voice still exists. Some of us gather, sort of in the form of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. That's sort of a group of preachers that are on the pulse of that tradition and are nurturing that tradition, and whose churches are in that tradition. So that it's not that this voice has ever died. It's just never the popular voice. It's never the voice that you see on TV. And so let me just keep being controversial since I'm already here, right? Who are the famous and well-known Black preachers, right?
Yeah.
It ain't the prophetic ones.
No.
All right. It generally ain't the prophetic ones, right?
No.
The last prophetic preacher that was lifted up into the public arena was Dr. Jeremiah Wright, our hero, pastor emeritus, Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago. And if you watch, this is Obama's pastor. Obama distanced himself from Dr. Wright. And so did a lot of other people distance themselves from Dr. Wright, his prophetic work, and the tradition that he represents. So I'm just saying all that to say that there has always been a prophetic part of the Black church. It exists now. You may not know who those people are, because they are not the famous people generally that people would say these are the figures in the Black church.
That part.
But we here. We've been here. We ain't going nowhere.
Hey, real fast, Dietrich, break down what you mean by prophetic. You keep saying that word, and that's a big word.
That's a good one, DeMarco. Yes, please.
So when people think civil rights, people that fight for rights, people that move to make changes in our community, whether it be around voting or policy or changes, like when you say civil rights movement, those actions that people took from protest to policy to moving, issues in the White House, that's prophetic work. When you're talking about widespread social change that's rooted in our faith, that we're doing because we believe, in our case, in the gospel of Jesus Christ, that's liberating and says that everybody is made in the image of God and everybody deserves dignity and freedom, and that we're not going to rest until freedom comes to our people. That tradition in our church is the prophetic tradition in the Black church. It's always existed since we were bound in chains and brought here. And it hasn't ended. But again, it's not the popular part of the Black church. It's not the part that's obvious to people. But the civil rights moment was a moment. But again, that was a minority tradition.
Yeah. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Dietrich Wise Baker. And amen. And I say to that, I would also include.
Go ahead, DeMarco.
Yeah. I also will add on that since again, I'm not gonna keep it real. I'm gonna make it real. there were congregations here in St. Louis that said, "Who, Dr. King? He better not come here. We don't want him coming here." So I think that's one of the other elements that sometimes can be seen in different ways, right? And I appreciate what Deidre shared around some people we want to be safe, right? Being prophetic ain't safe. Ain't nothing about that is safe the majority of the time. Again, that's what she asks, where's the danger? And I value that, and sometimes I lean on the word prophet, right? Because people think like, oh, they're prophet, they can predict the future. No, a prophet is somebody, I think it was Walter Brueggemann that says it often. A prophet is somebody who has a sacred book in one hand, a history book, something that explains things in the past, right? But then they also have today's newspaper. In today's modern time, your phone with Google and all the news feeds in the world, right? So when we looking at what's going on in the past and seeing what's happening right now, if we keep going this direction, we're going to end up here. This isn't going to end well according to these things. And that's another reason why some people do lean and do go towards whether it's religion or spirituality or even different sacred texts, because there is universal wisdom, regardless of whether you believe it or not, whether you worship certain things or not. There's universal wisdom there. And also there's universal wisdom within our families. There's universal wisdom in our big mamas and them, right? So we have to make sure that we listen and learn. And again, if we don't learn from our past mistakes, we're bound to repeat them. Another piece that I want to share that Deidre touched on was like the myth that yep, it was definitely Black people leading, running everything, and leading, being pushed up front also. Yes, there was a huge amount of Jewish brothers, sisters, and folks supporting the civil rights movement, because they also still were being discriminated against as well. There were maybe not the Nation of Islam, but there were Muslims. There were other faiths involved in the civil rights era. And I think it is an error, an ERROR, if we miss out or leave out people. There were people who were part of the LGBTQIA plus community before we even had all those, before we had an understanding of how to categorize or be able to intentionally see them, that were also involved in the movement that also got taken, that got minimized or erased. So, and that also happens in the church for different reasons too. So I think it's important to make sure that when we're talking about the civil rights era, it was just that. And I know it's a frustrating thing, especially if we talk about today with DEI. I say the whole thing with that one too: diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, because they actually are trying to do away with things where people do need assistance, if they do need wheelchair, if they do need wheelchair ramps or certain medications to be productive or whatever case may be. And that's a whole different concept as well, because we tend to start focusing on well, who's important and who's not, and when we start getting to these things as well. So it's a lot that we can unpack, but the Black church is still one of the places where safety, and sometimes if people were not organized enough, if they did not have enough, sometimes even enough faith, if they did not have the right leaders, or if they already had certain financial mobile opportunities, they didn't want to challenge that. They didn't want to risk that. So, sometimes we think the word salvation is supposed to equal safety. Like salvation may or may not equal safety, right? And I think that's another big word that sometimes people utilize, and sometimes that word has been commercialized as well.
That brings to me the thing that we see when people are quick to be like, oh, we just got to pray about it and let God handle it, put it in God's hand. What do they call it? I can't think of the term, but it's
spiritual.
I can't think of what it's called, but like
spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, yeah, there it is. Spiritual bypassing. It's like, that's the safest thing to say, right? It no longer becomes something that you can have an action to do. You just pass the thing and say that God is going to handle it without doing the work, which in the Bible says work faith without
Well,
works is dead. But
I want to nuance that a little bit,
okay.
because I think part of what it is, we're a lot of Black church. I don't say a lot. There's a portion, there's a dimension of Black church, and this is not an original thought to me, um, is a response to, historical trauma, right? Patterns, ways of what we would say is theologizing, meaning the way that we talk about God, think about God, what we make God mean and be, sometimes is a result of trying to protect ourselves, trying to survive, trying to get through, right? And so we got to think about who we are, people with onslaughts of attack, inside, outside, not having what you need, fighting, struggling, right? Attacks, all of that stuff. And so when you get to, something else that's overwhelming, something else that I have to work through, right? When I get to God, I want to rest. I want peace. I want relief, right? So, we can understand, right, some of the dimensions, of our church, to give us some release, to give us some rest, to give us some power. Because as a people and what we've been through, we can understand that, the church as a cultural response, to take care of us and to help us get through. And so some of that theological, those choices, I would say those theological choices aren't necessarily, malignant in the sense that, people are trying to be horrible. People just trying to survive, and people trying they're trying to make sense of what works for them. And that's easy. That's, being able to say, God just going to take care of it. That takes some weight off of me, because I ain't got to do nothing. And God knows we've done quite a bit. And so I understand, that part of us and that part of our theology, theology that gives us a break, if you will. But I think the critique is right that, ultimately that's not where we can stay, right?
Yeah, I thank you for that too, Reverend Dr. Dietra, especially about the critique. One time I did I was having a conversation with some of my fraternity brothers, and I asked them, it was really challenging, right? I asked them to imagine being some of the first humans with some of the first language, and you trying to understand why the sky is either blue or black. You may not even have colors, right? But then sometimes when it's blue, but then it turns gray, and then something comes down and tears up the whole area. Like, you don't know what that is. You have no idea, right? Now, think about, I'm going to fast forward really fast. You think about our ancestors who first encountered Europeans who were like, hey, get on these boats. You'd be like, no, like they was resistance, right? And you don't have white supremacy without guns. And because that was an invention that shaped the world, unfortunately. And I could imagine our ancestors, because everybody talk about like, well, what I would have done. We didn't. Our ancestors didn't know what guns were. Hadn't seen guns, and hadn't somebody put a gun to somebody's head. And the inside it goes on the outside. And you be like, okay, which boat you want to get on? Which one? The one with Jesus on the side of it? Okay, cool. I'm going on that one, right? Like, we didn't know. They didn't know that. Our ancestors didn't know that, right? But then so also, it's so overwhelming, the oppression, the systems, these different things. That's one reason why I said earlier, is it safe to even discuss these things? Is it even safe to say we're going to uprise? Is it safe to invite a Martin Luther King or I appreciate Clarice, Malcolm X to come to your church in Detroit with Reverend Albert Cleage? Is this even safe to even do that? Would that cost your membership to go away to, or is that inviting way more attention from white supremacists who are allowed to utilize not just religion, but they're allowed to utilize violence.
Mm-hmm.
They're
blowing
like
up churches and
like we lost track of how many church bombings occurred, right? We really don't know, right? And so so it's just, so therefore I do have some grace and mercy. At the same time, when people say, oh man, God's on the throne and God gonna take care of it, and especially if they're Christian, I'm like, what Christianity are you following? What and what do you mean by that, right? And I always bring up the elements. I like to break down words. I'm a what's called a logophile. I love words and definitions of words. The word Christ is the Greek word for Messiah. Messiah is the Hebrew word for anointed one. The anointed one is supposed to do two things, or especially Messiah / Mashiach. That's a different story. But Messiah is supposed to do two things. Anointed one. The anointed one is supposed to do two things: alleviate oppression and restore the kingdom of David. Right. This is some reason why some Jews don't really rock with Jesus. He was a prophet, but he was not Messiah because he didn't put us back on top. Right. So with that being said, we are called. We encourage. We can all be Christ-like, meaning we can all be liberators of oppression without having to be called Christians, but that's part of it. And everyone does not have to go along with those principles or what we say theology as well. They don't have to go along with that, but that's part of it.
I'm gonna say y'all done went through a whole lot and a lot to digest, but I appreciate you breaking down, because I think that's important too. Breaking down the terms and the words so people can fully understand, because sometimes people are just like, oh yeah, I'm this, but not really truly understanding what does it mean to be that. And we're not talking about the way that you're supposed to walk the walk, but what is the terms that we're utilizing to call ourselves. And you, Dr. Deidre, you said a lot. And I really want to touch in on the faith serving as both the source of the strength. Because you talked about that. Like, we've been through, look at the history. Like, we've been through so many things. And the Black church seems to have always been like that space where you have that relief, that you can, take off your, I hate to say the cape, but you could just take off the burden. You don't have to feel like you have to fight. That's been the space. That's been the strength of the Black community. And it's been the space also, though, where the call of action has been, right? The call of action to say, okay, well, we need to fight. We have to fight oppression and we have to fight injustice. Looking at where we are now, and I think you talked on it a lot too, that's no longer the sense of the space of a lot of the Black churches who are forward facing. It's not the usual of the conversation of hearing them say, let's fight the good fight. Let's move this call of action. Let's do this. It's kind of more of, we're just here to be the safe space. And that's all we can give you. That's all we got. How do we shift that for the Black church? How do we get back to the call of action? Because like you said, look where we are now.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, this reminds me of, I think Senator Raphael Warnock has a book called The Divided Mind of the Black Church. Mm-hmm. I really think it's an important book for anybody who's trying to understand where we came from and where the Black church is now in the context of the United States. But one of the things he talks about is sort of the tradition you just named, one of piety, right? This worshipful part of our tradition that, helped us to keep on keeping on, the hymns, the spirituals, the way that we worship, the way that we preach. Nobody preach like us, nobody don't preach like we preach. Right. And so, our culture, right, that has a particular form as it shows up in the Black church tradition, right? A uniqueness to it, right? That protected and preserved our people and our spirits, right? And so you have that tradition, and you have the protest tradition, which we've talked about extensively in terms of how the church even came into being and how that impulse has continued as well, not as loudly, but has always been there, right? And so then you have the rise of sort of the mega church and the impact of white evangelicalism on the Black church, right? And the moves to prosperity gospel, name it and claim it gospels, or things that kind of center around capitalism, the entry of capitalism. Honestly, that's what it is. The entry of capitalism into the church, where now theology in church becomes a vehicle to get more money in your pocket, to get you paid, for you to have to come up, for God to bless you, and all of all the language that was used to preserve our people and help our people to fight is now used to help us imagine how how we going to put money in our pocket and how we going to get more things, right? That language is co-opted. I would say for capitalism, right? And it takes the songs and the culture and all the good stuff that our ancestors gave us, and it uses it honestly for to build up capitalism. And you get these churches who are built around sort of, their centers for that theology. And this is not purely, but I'm saying that's a part of it. I'm not saying God's not even there, because God is there, but it's mixed what you're getting out of those spaces. And so I think part of what we have to be attentive to as a Black church in this moment is who are we going to be, right? This is what I say. Our ancestors didn't give us this particular faith. This faith doesn't mean anything if you actually not fighting. The songs that our ancestors gave them, if you sing them and you ain't fighting, some of the songs don't even really make sense, right? All they do is kind of become your personal salve, right? For your personal emotions and your family and what's going on with you individually, right? Which is a lot of what has happened. But the power of those spirituals, the power of those songs, the power of our tradition was for people who were actually fighting, who were actually doing something, who were in danger, who were risking their lives, who were changing things. That's what the tradition is for. The Black liberative Black church tradition. It is for people who are fighting for justice, right? And so when it's not being used for that, and it's being used for other things to prop up other ideologies that I would say are not of God and are not about love and liberation, then it becomes something very self-serving, something very evil, and something I would say very demonic in terms of what it does to the church and to the community. So you got a church that's prospering, however the block is rotting. I think that is an abomination to God and to the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Amen. Amen, Lashe.
I was like, y'all got me over here like, woo! I ain't never been speechless, but I'm speechless because that is exactly what we see today. Go ahead, DeMarco.
Yeah. No, I just, man, amen. One of the elements of the Black church, right? It was a place. At one point in time, it was the place where Black folks could be the freest, away from the white gaze, Gaze, right? Like so, away from the stare, and it was a place where Black men were no longer boys, right? Like no longer being respected. Also came with titles. Also came with respect. Also came with understanding. Now, and before I go too further, right, too far, we also have to make sure we bring in some of the elements around what are some of the laws that are also happening and changing over time as well, which is how a lot of the not just along with the capitalism comes along with a lot of the toxic masculinity, things of that nature that comes along with that too, right? So some of the laws change, other things change. So I bring up the whole aspect of the Black church where we could be the freest, because that was a place where the community came. And when I say the community, meaning people lived there. And there were over time when especially clergy or pastors or preachers would then get connected. One of the ways that we end up getting, to me, this is what I call entanglement with empire a little bit, was that when they said, hey, we need to know, hey, we got some work. We want low wage workers. We don't want to pay certain people certain wages, but we'll pay you Black folks a little less than. So who got an access to people who might be actually organized, people who actually may know how to read, right? If you're going to teach the Bible and people read along with the Bible or reading hymns, people understand these things, right? These become certain skills that everyone may or may not have. And even today, we still see and hear how many people still may be illiterate or illiterate as well, even today, right? So church was a space and place where people were able to have not just dignity, but also gain certain skills and abilities that transcended outside of the church too. So businesses will come, talk to a pastor and say, who you got, pastor, and then hire those folks. Then what would also start happening is that, oh, well, now we getting more money because we got people, going to work now. Now we can pay some tithes and build this church up too, right? So it's a nice amount of congregations that probably would not have existed if a pastor or somebody else hadn't got connected with one of the unions at a car manufacturer. So down we started saying, oh, well, also, I'm going to make it 100, right? When the Emancipation Proclamation happened and Black folks finally got free, what does free mean? What does free look like? They've never seen freedom before. And freedom, unfortunately, looked like moving around like white folks, being able to get away from wherever you from, be able to do whatever you want to. And sometimes people want to get away either because there was still actual terrorism still happening, right? That still happens to this day. But then there also was like, there's so much pain and hurt. I don't want to stay here. But then also there were, they hiring folks up in St. Louis. They hiring folks up in Detroit. Let me go up there. Right. And so I'm leaving, but I'm leaving. Why? Not just to get away, but I'm leaving to make sure that I can actually get money and send it to my family. The same way we've seen refugees from other countries come here and still send money back home. It's not that much different. And I think that's sometimes what happens with that salvation became mobilization. If you mobile, oh, well, God must be doing something in your life, right? And then start attaching those type of elements of theology to progress. And if you still stuck at that job, God ain't, you must be doing something wrong. God ain't moving in your life because you doing something wrong. But if you listen to what I say do and behave the way I do, although I don't even work at your job, you'll be blessed, and then you'll be all right. So it's just that self-centered element that starts coming from those things too. So that's one thing I think that happens. And also, lastly, the power of the Black church, especially when it comes to equity or justice. That's why I literally had a conversation with several clergy yesterday and then last week, excuse me, about how politicians also used to know that, oh, I better go talk to this pastor, I better go talk to this leader at this church because they know what's happening in the community. Unfortunately, there's so many people now that do not live close to the church that they go to, right? At one point in time, and it's something that's relatively new in the past 20, 30 years, right? So this is new. At one point in time, you went to the church around the corner from you, so everybody knew each other. Everybody was had a familiarity, and as Dietrich shared, the not just the mega church, but the commercialization and the customization of worship. Like, oh, I want a church that got I want a church that got this. They don't got that. I ain't going. Right. That's the commercialization, the capitalism, almost entertainment to a certain degree. And sometimes, hey, we need some entertainment. We need that. We need to relax. We need to be able to let go and enjoy. Kick our shoes off, run around, slap somebody, high five, all that. We need that too. At the same time, when elected officials know that, oh, if I come talk to your congregation, if I come to your congregation in St. Louis City, but all of your congregants live in St. Louis County, I'm not talking to my voters. I need to be out here talking to voters. Oh, y'all don't. Oh, none of y'all. Okay, so then I'm not coming to this church to talk anymore. Y'all don't have the same power as y'all used to. The political power, the local political power. So that's something that also has changed. And I think in order to get back to that, congregations need to build better relationships with the community that is still standing, that's still around, and it can't not be. I don't think this is my thoughts, nobody else's. I don't think it's okay for a congregation to say we're just going to take care of anybody who comes in and nobody else. Like, the doors of the church are semi-open. Like, I don't think that's healthy, and I think that comes to still where people are looking at and feeling dismayed with the church. How does the community look different? Like, and this is my last thing I'll share on this one. When I had to go back to seminary, I had to write a little paper because I hadn't been to school in a long time. And I talked about how there were 5 different congregations up and down Grand right next door to each other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 different denominations. So it wasn't even just Christians, right? But 5 different denominations. And if I was somebody who lived in a community or lived in a neighborhood, I would feel like, man, either God don't exist or God has abandoned the north side. How we got 5 congregations who are all saying the glory, 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 and or if we believe in the model prayer on earth as it is in heaven. Heaven sounds really amazing. Earth don't sound like it's amazing, and that's one thing I share people. That's one reason why certain things resonate as well. One of my favorite lines from Wu-Tang. What do you believe in, heaven or hell? We don't believe in heaven because we're living in hell, right? If the life circumstances, if the life does not change, if a congregation is not changing lives, transforming lives, lifting up lives, then I think it's a dying church.
And I think that's what we are. There's no there's no more faith in the church. The faith has left the church. The church. I agree. The church does not hold anymore. It doesn't hold as much power as it once did.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to touch on something that you kind of brought in, laws, but I think also thinking about how the government played a part in some of this thing as well when they started putting their hands in the church. When we talk about capitalism and how churches operate now. So I'm a little, this is personal for me as I'm on a journey, y'all, to think about, because even thinking about like, spiritually and thinking about like, I cannot even fathom a church here in St. Louis that I would want to attend because everything does feel so, capitalism. It feels so white supremacy. It feels so not true to what we know it's supposed to be. And there's a church in every community. There's a church across every street. But there, like you said, the community doesn't look like it should look when we're talking about thriving and liberation and all of those things. But we have more churches than anything in our communities.
Yeah, the Black church in particular, when you think about land owning mass of the Black community in terms of economic power, the Black church has the most land. Black people's, the land that Black people have, the number one landowner in the Black community is the Black church.
Yeah.
It's important. This is critical, right? As we think about critical resources, and power. Black church has the land owning mass of our community. And I think community members, who feel like, hey, you know what, maybe we're not part of the church or whatever. We don't have nothing to say about that. I think, in new ways, the church has to be held accountable to the Black community. The Black community, and I think people, will say things, kind of, we're sick of the Black church, we tired and whatever. But I would love, and I loved it during Ferguson here, and when the young people just, out of the church and into the streets, like, when y'all gonna be who you supposed to be, for this generation and for this time and place? When are you gonna get out of yourself? When you're going to stop just worrying about those 4 walls and be who you were called to be in your piety and in the protest that you were created, which was not for yourselves, but was for the liberation of our people. And what is your particular assignment? Every community should be asking every Black church, what is your assignment in terms of the liberation of our people in this neighborhood? What has God given you to do? To liberate our people in this neighborhood? You ain't called to do everything. Please tell me, what is the 1 or 2 things you've been called to do to liberate the people in this neighborhood? That's what we want to know. And I feel like people in the community, people in the hood, people who, you want a relationship with us, you want us to come and worship with you, answer that question. what are you here to do to liberate the people in our community? If you would be about the liberation of our people in the community, we ain't dumb. We know Jesus too. We may not have, be all up in the church, but we know God when we see God. And if you start setting people free for real, not just at the altar, then somebody may be able to discern that God is still alive, that Jesus does live, because God is doing something in the community that actually is impacting people's real lives, not just their spiritual life, but their real life. And when that starts to happen, you don't have to, beg, borrow, and steal, beg, and push people in the church. I think they might come on in there when they see that the church is actually making a difference and actually liberating our people in the neighborhoods and the places where our people are experiencing death and destruction. So if the church can't be about life and it can't make a tangible impact on the life of the community where it lives, why are you there and what are you doing? I think, again, you're not answering the call that we had from the beginning, which is to be a protest and pietistic church, to protect the people and to liberate the people.
Yeah, amen. And I'm definitely gonna give a shout out. Hey, anybody, come on through. Come to St. John CCC. Reverend Michelle Higgins, the pastor. Come on through. And I'm preaching this Sunday. For those who are watching it live, I'm preaching this Sunday. Come through. And also, as I'm seeing some people that's in the chat too. I think the people who are still doing the work. Jamila Nasheed, Ronnie Amin, right? The people who still doing this work in community are some of the most faith-filled people. They may not be Christian. Like, we all are people. We all are children of God or creators, or the creator, right? Children of the creator or a holy creator, universe, whatever somebody want to call it, right? And there's a essence of what is free, what is salvation, that's important. Unfortunately, I think, again, back to the aspect of capitalism, far too many people are looking, and salvation is just getting off the hood, right? And if you got that type of mentality, instead of saying, no, we're going to build, we're going to grow, we're going to protect. Can you protect? Can you legally protect? That's a whole nother conversation too, right? We talking about the laws. But also, at one point in time, nothing else happened on Sunday. You went to church, and you probably went to Big Mama's house for family dinner. Now, you can do this. There's 30 different things you can do. And this is before the pandemic. We ain't talking about the pandemic, right? And now some people I know, Black folks who raised in the church, grew up in the church, are so focused on making sure their children have the best chance for sports, right? Now, I'm not going to vilify sports, but and if they are lifting up sports, why are they lifting at it and going so hard? Because they see that as a way for access, for progression, for salvation, to get about the hood again, right? And that's no longer faithful, right? Yeah, you can still be amazing. There's professional Christian athletes. So, you can still have a faith, right? But when it comes to community, I think, to me, that's the big piece that's missing, is the aspect of, it's not just about you and your own personal salvation. It's a communal salvation. That's I know some people utilize the principle Ubuntu. I am because we are because I am. If I'm not good, y'all not good. If y'all not good, I'm not good. If somebody in community got AIDS, I got AIDS. If somebody going out, if somebody not able to eat, I need to be able to figure out how to make sure that everybody is eating. So, for example, one of the things that congregations can do, and even MCU, we are working on creating a faith-based food network, right? To make sure that first off, to connect congregations is already doing that. And it's another piece too that I just want to lift up for all the congregations, the synagogue and the mosque, all right, that actually and people, places of faith who are still doing stuff in the neighborhoods, in the communities, and people don't know it, right? Or people don't see it because they don't drive in the area. I guarantee you those areas be 10 times, 100 times worse without those small churches. When I say small too, right? Most people think of like the big mega churches. And a mega church is 500 or more people. If you have to have a parking committee, that's a mega church, right? Just let it be known, right? But a lot of people see those type of churches and think, oh, ain't nothing happening. The average church is between 25 to 75 people, and usually smaller than that sometimes. And people are trying to do their darndest to even keep those doors open sometimes because they do feel called, they do feel led to provide. And I think there's so it's one thing to maintain what's going on. It's another thing to transform and change and advocate and become activists and liberate and focus on justice. That sometimes, again, I think of Maslow hierarchy of needs. If I need quality food, water, and shelter. That's what. And if even when we look in the Bible or in another sacred text, are people eating quality? Right? Are people drinking? Do they have access to that? And are they shelter? Do they have shelter? Right? And so many people who don't. So to me, it also like if every congregation, every body of faith, if every group of people who meet up on brunch on Sunday say, "Hey, yo, what area are we gonna focus on to eliminate whatever that problem is?" We'll have a completely different type of Black community. And also, the Black church also was sometimes the first place for Black business, for Black entrepreneurship too. So I can't leave that part out. But just participating in capitalism and thinking that we're going to be saved by capitalism is not faith. It's not religion, right? But it's it's business, as some people will say it.
And just add on there, just biblically, individual salvation really isn't a biblical item. I just say go read the text. God saves a people, not a person. Hebrew, Bible, or New Testament. People. A people. So it's almost like, this idea that we can individually be saved it's not really biblically accurate.
It's more of a different type of culture when we think about in those type of individualism mindsets. It's you guys have said a lot on today, and I appreciate all of what you have shared, all your insights. I hope folks take a lot from this and continue to digest, because I'm digesting all of it. I do want to ask you, as before we leave off, shout out to everybody that tapped in. I do want to ask you, because you all kind of hit on some of these things already of like action items and things. I really truly appreciated you asking, what are you, the church, what are you doing? What are you doing to liberate our people? What is your assignment? I want to be clear on understanding what is your assignment as you come post up in the community, or you ask me to join your congregation. Like, what are you really doing? So I appreciate that, but I do want to say to each of you, and please also, as you answer this question, tell folks again how they can connect with you all. Because one thing too, really fast, I do want to give you space to talk about Black Women Lead and the work that you all are doing in that space. I almost forgot, but I do want to give you some space to kind of uplift and talk about a little bit more about what you all are doing and how people can get involved in that space.
Yeah, I mean, I think you all understand sort of the political environment. We've had, a heartbreaking election loss this week with the Mayor Jones not getting reelected. And when you look at that data, it's clear that the Black electorate that did vote did make a decision, including the Black electorate that decided to not vote. And so that is just to say, that, we have to build Black political power. And there's lots of folks that are all on top of that. Ronnie Amin's here. There's other orgs in the building. I think I saw Mama Jamala here, who's been building power in St. Louis for a long time. There's politicians. There's folks that are doing this work quietly, piece by piece. But I'll just say when Black Women Lead. When Black Women Lead is organizing Black women to faith, Black women voters. We want to speak directly to Black women, the most reliable part of the electorate in our country. In Missouri, we want to build a direct line between Black women candidates, Black women elected officials, and Black women voters, because we're the most reliable part of the electorate. And it's time for us to have our hands and be able to move power the way that we need to. And the only way to do that is to build an organization that we own, that we run, that we lead, that we supply. And so when Black women lead, we need 5,000 Black women to become members, and we'll have a over $1 million organization. And that's what we need. We need to be able to put organizers across the state on the ground, Black women organizers on the ground, not just during election cycles, be able to augment Black women who are running for school board elections, who are running for council seats. We're giving up a lot of power because we really haven't built the power in our neighborhoods. You know, elections being won by 50 votes, elections being won by thousands of votes, right? One, because of turnout, but which means that our electorate is not engaged. And so when Black Women Lead wants to speak and build the Black women electorate to have a place where Black women voters, again, Black women elected officials and Black women candidates come together, we have a strategy for how we want to move in the state of Missouri. And we're not waiting for nobody to come and save us. We know we can save ourselves. We always have, we always will. I'll put it in the, so for those who want to get more information, you can come to heartlandaction.org and you can find me online and let's connect. Let's link up. Thanks, DeMarco.
Man, mic drop. I don't know if I got nothing else. I was gonna ask a question, but after that, who ain't nobody coming to save us. We gonna save ourselves, like we always have. That's the message. That should be crystal clear. So we got to get in the game, in a strategic way, and find the spaces where we are doing the work and get in the game collectively. So we got work to do. We do.
And DeMarco may want to say something about MCU and just organizing Black churches. You know, Black church.
Yeah.
25. Let's go.
Right. And by the way, you know, Black congregations, right? So, you know, again, I'm so excited to see. I saw that Eaton Seminary is actually having an event that Dietrich is responsible for, but Ronnie Amin is going to be one of the trainers, right? A Muslim brother training at a Christian institution is not. That's what we got to do, right? And so also, I just want to share for those who say like, "Yo, I don't feel comfortable going to certain congregations and churches." First off, my heart goes out to everyone and praying for you all, and not. That's a tough challenge, because there is a real thing called church hurt. There's a real thing. Now, at the same time, anytime you add human beings into anything, somebody is bound to have flaws. First and foremost, anything when you add humans, right? But when it comes to church hurt, it's because there are people who are saying, trying to hold other people accountable, but the congregation of folks, people are not holding a leader or an adult accountable as well. So I encourage everybody. All churches are not the same. All congregations are not the same. Not in the same denomination. Find some place to actually hold adults accountable. Find the leaders. Find a place where the leaders are held accountable. It's not just a dictatorship, right? And that's one reason I encourage people to come on St. John's, UCC, where Reverend Michelle Higgins is the pastor. She is not a tyrant. I serve as the president of the congregation. She don't get to be a tyrant. And I'm not a tyrant either, because the people of faith actually hold me accountable. The people in the community hold us accountable. So there are things that we are aiming for, and that's why we created a community garden. And the community knows they can come and get whatever they want whenever they want from the garden, because it's not our garden, it's the community's garden. It's not St. John's garden. We may be stewards of it, but it's the community's garden. So people know that. At the same time, our community, especially in the north side, is dwindling. So that is something that we're working to address. We are looking to work with people like Reverend Andre Alexander at Tabernacle, who has an amazing community development corporation on the other side of Natural Bridge. And they actually have created 30 housing units. Again, people don't talk about it, people don't know, but why would you know on the other side of Natural Bridge off of Ashland. And like, why would you know that if you're not over there anymore? You don't visit your grandma over there anymore. You don't hang out with your cousins and them over there anymore. Why would you know that? Right. So it's a lot of amazing work that is happening with clergy, Central Baptist, that they are doing, I mean, phenomenal things with creating a brand new garden as well, and several other services they're doing. So it's incredible. So again, I encourage people to find a space and a place that can hold people accountable, but also it is like nurturing your soul for the work that you are called to do, right? Nurturing your soul for the work that you called to do. That's one reason why. That's how I ended up at St. John's in the first place in 2008, 2009. I was doing so much stuff outside of the church. I'm like, I really enjoy what I'm doing. And where's the place that understands the politics of Jesus, the new Jim Crow, the original sin? Like, where's a church that understands that Malcolm and Martin was almost connected, and click, almost about to click up, why they were so powerful. And that's one of the reasons why they got cut down, right? That's one reason why Fred Hampton was cut down, because people start rising up and actually having some ability to make changes and make declarations and then act on those. That's dangerous for the powers that be. And then we see that happening even in St. Louis City, in St. Louis County, in Missouri, in Missouri, and the country right now. There are people who do not want us to rise up. There are people who do not want us to click up. There are people who want us to stay separated. They want us to say, oh, they don't believe in the same Jesus as you. I've been to, I don't know how many congregations. I've been to a lot, and this amazing. I think that's nothing that is changing. That there are clergy who are being trained better and being trained that we don't got all the answers. We honestly don't. We ain't got all the answers. But not only that, we understand and making the connections between the plight of justice, to say liberation. That's a provocative thing in many spaces and places. So those are some things that are changing. And we have to make that what the goal is, what the aim is for our congregations as well. So with Metropolitan Congregations United, MCU for short, we are working to continue to collaborate and build up congregations. And we recognize that some congregations are still wrestling with what their mission and vision may be. So we support them in that. There are some congregations who want to get more involved in the community surrounding them. We support them in that too. And then there's some congregations that understand their mission and vision. They give the community and they're ready to take things to another level and they actually want to work on policy. Like, I love that. I love that, right? I'm looking for the congregations on all those levels. However, those who say, hey, this policy is hurting us in this community. This policy is not only hurting us, it's hurting the community here. It's keeping us from living our best life. It's keeping us from being more in tune with our higher power. And who else is it impacting? And that's one of the great things about working with MCU and other like, again, not just focusing just on Christians, right? A lot of the missionary Baptists, they all know each other, right? The AMEs, they know each other. Catholics, Kojics, whatever, they know each other. But the AME may not know the missionary Baptist next door, may not know the Lutheran around the corner, may not know the Catholic down the street, but all of them are being impacted by the same thing, trying to serve the same community. And so therefore, we don't necessarily come in when I don't like people say we come in, right? We come looking to be an asset and not a liability, and looking to listen, to hear what congregations are up against, also what God is calling them to be and to do, and to see, oh, by the way, did you know this other congregation was doing the same thing? In fact, I use the example of how the Advancing Church says we want to do a prison ministry. Why? Why do y'all want to do a prison ministry, right? And the Advancing Church has one of the best entrepreneurial elements for Black business in North City, right? They have a ton of entrepreneurs there. One of the reasons why they care about a prison ministry is they understand that when brothers and sisters get out, they need somewhere to work. That's why they want to be involved in prison ministry. So I was like, okay, well, before y'all do that, have you talked to this other congregation that's less than a mile from y'all, who's already got a prison ministry, is already going in? I'm going to Pacific in the prison next Tuesday, right? So do y'all know that already? No, let's start there, right? And so therefore, we got to make sure we focus on that way too. So we won't compete. I tell people all the time, I'm here to complete, not to compete. And I think that's another element that hopefully people are moving away from, because it is dire. It is dire times that we've never seen before, at least in our lifetime. But that's another thing that I lean on heavy for my faith, that our ancestors dealt with way worse. And that's where I feel like we get the privilege and the honor and sometimes even the luxury to sit under the trees that we did not plant, to organize in basements that we did not develop and build, to walk down roads that we didn't build either, right? That's an honor. So when people say we not our ancestors, you're right. We not our ancestors. We are nowhere near our ancestors. I look forward to becoming an ancestor one day. And I pray that our actions are inspirational for the next generation to keep fighting for liberation. And that's now, and that's whether we fighting for liberation here in America or somewhere else, because the church is global.
Well, thank you all for joining me. I appreciate it. Shout out to everybody again for tapping in. I hope y'all shared this video and all of this knowledge and gems and insight and education that was shared here today. I hope you all tap in somewhere. If you have a faith base, tap in. Black women, tap in. There's work to be done. There are spaces to go and get in and help yourself into that work. You don't have to keep creating things. This is not the time. I appreciate that. The time is to come together and collaborate. We ain't got to keep doing the same things over and over. We need to join together and maximize what's already being done, because there are things being done. So that's it. That's all we have, because time we cutting time. But thank you all again for tapping in. The Hood Talks podcast, we got a lot of things still to come. Tomorrow I'll be at the Gold Forbes for the Centering Joy and the Black Birthing Experience Conference. Shout out to that. It's actually sold out, y'all. We got sold out. But the thing about that is I will be live. Hoping I can make sure we get live, and we will be showing you all the simulations and talking to the audience about the simulations that they're going to be showing in this conference. So if you could tap in, I can't tell you what time. I don't know, but I'll definitely post it in the morning what time, around the time frame, because it's technology and it's a conference. It's not easy to know what's gonna happen at the conference. It's just don't work that way. But that. And what else we got going on? So much. Just keep tapping in. If you ain't following the Hood Talks podcast on social media, you missing out. Make sure you follow our Facebook page, because I'm always posting what we got going on. All right, y'all. Be safe. Have a great weekend, and we will see you April 17th at the link up. We'll see you there. All right, y'all. We out.